Radio Migrante every Sunday night from 9 to 10 p.m. on CHRY 105.5 FM.
Magandang gabi po. Andito po si Louie, andito po si Mary, at ang inyo pong lingkod, si Pet. Bumati naman kayo.
Ay, magandang gabi po sa inyo lahat, sa mga nakikinig ng Radyo Migrante ngayong gabi. Binabati namin si JR Timpog ng Toronto at si JC and Prakash Patel Family of Ajax. Hello sa inyo lahat.
I'll try, yeah. Maayong aga sa tanan nga nagapaminaw sa Radyo Migrante sa tibuok nga Pilipinas, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao.
Sa news and headlines po natin, ang unang balita, pagbabalik sa kulungan kay Palparan, hiniling ng mga biktima sa korte. Ito po ay galing sa Bulatlat. Hiniling ng 2 pamilyang taga-Universidad ng Pilipinas na pawang biktima ng sapilitang pagkawala sa korte ng Bulacan ang pagbabalik kay Major General Palparan sa kulungan. Sa mosyong inihain noong Setyembre 26 ng National Union of People's Lawyers, NUPL, na kumakatawad kina Erlinda Kadapan at Concepcion Empeño, mga magulang ng nawawalang sina Sherlyn Kadapan at Karen Empeño na hindi makatarungan ng paglilipat kay Palparan sa kustodya ng Philippine Army. Ayon kay Judge Chedora Gonzales, nang naunang dinggin ang kaso noong Agosto 18, hindi maaring ilipat sa military jail ang kulungang para sa mga militar si Palparan dahil ito ay retirado na, at kung gayo'y itinuturing na isa ng sibilyan na hindi kagaya ng mga kasama nitong akusado na sina Colonel Felipe Anotado at Staff Sergeant Edgardo Osorio. Subalit noong Setyembre 15, pinagbigyan ni Judge Gonzales ang mosyon ng abogado ni Palparan na ilipat ito sa Philippine Army Custodial Center sa Taguig City dahil umano sa mga banta sa buhay ng berdugong general. Bukod pa dito, ang presensya ni Palparan sa PBJ umano ay naglalagay sa panganib hindi lamang sa mga preso doon, kundi pati na rin ang mga sibilyang nagtatrabaho sa mga sangay ng gobyerno at pribadong opisina doon. Subalit, ayon sa mga pamilya ng mga biktima ni Palparan, walang batayan ang argumento sa sinasabing may banta sa buhay kay Palparan kung kaya ito ay nilipat sa kustodya ng Philippine Army. Ang suwika nila, ang mga ito ay pawang mga espekulasyon lamang at walang batayan at isang paraan lamang upang hindi siya maparusahan at mabigyan pa nga ng special treatment ayon sa mga pamilya ng mga biktima. Sinangayunan naman ito ni Colonel Pepito Flamenco, Warden ng Bulacan Provincial Jail, at ni Senior Superintendent Ferdinand Divina, Acting Chief ng Kapulisan ng Bulacan, na pawang espekulasyon lamang ang sinasabing umano'y banta sa buhay ng berdugang general.
Aktivista ng Hacienda Luisita tumanggap ng banta sa ika-42 taong pagunita ng batas militar. Sa ika-42 taong anibersaryo ng pagkakadeklara ng batas militar, tumanggap ng mga banta sa buhay ang isang makata at aktivista sa Central Luzon. Ang coordinator ng support network para sa magsasaka ng Hacienda Luisita na si Pia Montalban ay nakatanggap ng pagbabanta sa kanyang buhay dahil sa kanyang gawaing kaugnay sa mga magsasaka ng Hacienda Luisita. Kanina may lumapit sa akin, binibigyan ako ng papel na may telephone number daw. Sakali daw na magbagong isip ko sa ginagawa ko, bumilis lakad ko ngayon, katatanggap ko at mula sa isang kaibigan. So pag may masamang nangyari sa akin, pakihanap ako sa NOLCOM. Ang NOLCOM ay ang Northern Luzon Command ng mga militar na nakabase sa Camp Serviliano Aquino, Tarlac City, na isang hakbang lamang mula sa Hacienda Luisita. Ayon kay Montalban, ang unang insidente ng pagbabanta ay nangyari sa isang mobilisasyon para pagdaos ng isang rally sa pagunita ng ika-42 taong ng batas militar. Habang nagpapakopya ito ng mga polyeto at statements sa isang computer shop para sa naturang rally, may napansin itong isang sibilyang sumusunod sa kanya. Namumuhukaan ko na sumusunod siya sa marcha. Medyo napaisip pero di pa kinakabahan, ayon kay Pia. Subalit nang paalis na siya sa computer shop, may nagsalita sa likod. Kapag nagbago ang isip mo, sa ginagawa mo, tawagan mo kami. Iniaabot niya ang puting papel na nakatupi. Hindi ko nahawakan ang papel at hindi ko na ito pinansin. Binilisan ko na lakad ko patungo kung saan naroon ang mga kasamahan sa rally na nagtitipon sa plaza sa Luisita Complex, dagdag pa ni Pia.
Never again. Filipinos around the world say no to B.S. Aquino dictatorship. In the wake of protests by Filipinos in Europe during President B.S. Aquino's recent trips to Spain, Belgium, France, and Germany, Global Alliance of Overseas Filipinos Migrante International issued a warning to President B.S. Aquino against plans for a term extension. Migrante Europe, together with other Filipino groups and human rights organizations, held series of protest actions last week in Belgium, France, and Italy as B.S. Aquino commenced his 8-day European tour. According to Gary Martinez, Migrante International chairperson, the protests were meant to show the disgust and outrage of Filipinos in Europe and all over the world over B.S. Aquino's corruption, puppetry, and dictatorship. Martinez made the statement as Filipinos worldwide commemorated the 42nd anniversary of the Declaration of Martial Law on September 21. He said the best way to remember martial law is to emulate the heroism and activism of the earlier generation who fought during a time when the country was in political and economic turmoil and human rights violations ran rampant. Now, 42 years later, nothing much has changed. The same conditions that prompted those before us to fight against poverty, abuses, and exploitation remain and have gotten worse. There is clearly still a need to fight for genuine social change. Martinez also said that, like Marcos, B.S. Aquino is more concerned with exporting and exploiting cheap labor of Filipino workers in exchange for remittances. He said when it comes to their rights and the welfare, our OFWs are in an era darker than during martial law. The labor export policy was first institutionalized by former President Marcos in an effort to curb the economic crisis and to suppress dissent brought about by lack of jobs, low wages, and landlessness. Post-Marcos regimes continued to implement labor export, and 4 years under the B.S. Aquino regime has been the worst years for Filipino migrants and their families. OFWs and their families here and abroad are now more than ever geared to fight for social change to end labor export and exploitation of our rights. We vow to continue the fight for martial law heroes, said Martinez. Ang last news po natin, VP Binay hits DBM for removal of overseas absentee voting budget, appeals to Congress to restore allotment. Vice President Jejomar C. Binay expresses disappointment in the Department of Budget and Management's decision to scrap the 89.6 million pesos allocation for overseas absentee voting registration in the 2015 budget as he appealed to members of Congress to reinstate the allotment. Binay, the presidential advisor on OFW concerns, said the DBM should, quote, explain its basis for such a unilateral and arbitrary decision, unquote. During the budget hearing in the House of Representatives on Thursday, the Commission on Elections, COMELEC, said its proposed budget for OAV registration was not included by the DBM in the COMELEC's 2015 budget in the National Expenditure Program, or NEP. Lawmakers have also previously slammed Budget Secretary Florencio Abad over his decision to scrap the 89.6 million pesos OAV budget. The Overseas Absentee Voting Act, considered a milestone upon its passage in 2003, recognized the right of Filipino migrants to vote. The act covers some 10.5 million Filipino migrants spread across 238 countries all over the world. Ang guest natin mamaya ay si Mr. Malcolm Guy, na ating founding member and current communications officer ng Center for Philippine Concerns. Ito po ay isang solidarity organization based in Montreal which had built solidarity between the people of Quebec, Canada, and the Philippines for the past 31 years. He is also a filmmaker, director, and film producer of Productions Multi-Monde, a film production company in Montreal, Quebec, which he co-founded with Marie Boti in 1987.
O siguro habang kinokonekta pa ni Mary ay malagang ipaliwanag natin yung sa tingin natin yung kahalagaan nito bago natin kausapin si Malcolm. Hindi ba, Tita Pet?
Yung international solidarity ang ibig mo sabihin. Oo, ang pakikiisa kasi ng nating mga Pilipino sa ibang mga lahi dito sa Canada at maging sa mga ibang bayan sa buong daigdig kung saan naroon ang mga migrante na Pinoy ay mahalaga kasi kung matatandaan natin maraming mga issue tayo na napabilis ang pagresolba noong ang mga taga-ibang bansa at ibang lahi ay nakiisa sa atin sa mga petisyon o mga suhestyon ng mga migrante. Isa na dito kung matatandaan ng maraming taga dito na mga live-in caregivers nung panahon ng FDM na hinihingi nila na tanggalin yung forced remittance na hinihingi ni McCoy. Tapos nakiisa dito ang mga tao dito sa Canada. Isa lang yan sa mga halimbawa. Welcome to the show, Malcolm.
Thanks very much for having me.
We would like very much to hear your definition about international solidarity.
Very good question. Yes. Yeah, international solidarity. Well, solidarity for me, it's a two-way thing. So we're talking about equals. So it's really learning from each other, assisting each other, exchanging with each other. So if we're talking about international solidarity, then yes, on an international basis, right? So, for example, with the Philippines, it means that we exchange with groups in the Philippines, workers' groups, women's groups, indigenous groups, and so on. And we attempt to put them in touch with similar groups here in Quebec and in Canada, for example, indigenous groups or women's groups or workers, so that they can exchange and learn from each other and build solidarity across the thousands of kilometers that separate us, right? And also hopefully learn a lot in the meantime. I personally, whenever I go to the Philippines, for example, I always tell people when I come back, it's like I have my batteries recharged because I learn so much there. I get involved in the people's struggles. They talk to me. They tell me about their lives. They ask me about what's going on in Canada, in Quebec. And the whole experience is really amazing. For me, solidarity, I think, has given me more than I've ever been able to give back, So really it is an exchange, but I think personally I'm the one that benefited from it the most. But I do hope that in return, I was able to assist and to, make known, for example, what's going on in the Philippines to people here, to make people aware of, for example, why there are so many migrant workers coming from the Philippines, right? What are the reasons for that? What the situation is in the Philippines, and vice versa, letting people in Canada know about the fact that there are many mining companies from Canada, big mining companies going to the Philippines and getting their support in return. So the work is really double-ended. It's the work between equals. It's learning. It's researching, and for me, that's solidarity, right? It generally what solidarity means is you may not earn anything from it, not in terms of dollars, but it's priceless in terms of what you will get out of it in the long term.
So this relationship you've had with the Philippines, for example, I was just wondering, because you have been with the organization for 31,
for Philippine
the Center for
Concerns,
Philippine Concerns for 31 years. But has your solidarity work with the Philippines, is that longer than the 31 years?
I was involved even before that in the 1970s. I started to hear about the Marcos dictatorship at that particular time, right? And I think, like for many people, it was it was the assassination, the Aquino assassination in 1982, 83 that really turned things around. I mean, it's hard to imagine now. So our Center for Philippine Concerns, for example, was formed in 1983, right during the upsurge in the people power movement in the Philippines, right? So it really was in answer to the Philippine people's struggle against the dictatorship at that time. So we were influenced here, and I mean, at that time, Filipinos had already started to come to Canada, right? Because, in many ways, because of the dictatorship there and the problems that people were facing, there were economic problems, so people were coming here already to seek a better life. There were also political refugees that were coming here that had been obliged to leave the Philippines because of their opposition to the dictatorship. So around, at that stage in the early 1980s, in particular from 1983 on, we were, I was personally, along with many people around me, influenced and touched by what was going on in the Philippines, and influenced by the level of struggle there, by the level of the people power movement, and it's hard to imagine today the impact that it had on all of us non-Filipinos, right? We're really swept up in that movement and really admired what the Philippine people were able to do eventually. Actually throw out the dictator in 1986. So it was that was my introduction, if you like, to the Philippines, with that whole people power movement and that people power period, and it really swept across Canada. I would say thousands and literally thousands of us were touched by that at that time, and we decided to set up the Center for Philippine Concerns, and we've managed to keep it going ever since for 31 years. We celebrated actually our 30th anniversary last year, actually on September 21st.
Happy anniversary, belated.
Yeah, the anniversary of the declaration of martial law. We celebrated it last year, and we brought together many people who had worked with the center over the 30 years. So it was like a homecoming, if you like. So lots of people came together. It was really an exciting. It was an exciting event. We even Imelda Marcos turned up.
Oh.
Well, it was someone dressed as Imelda Marcos,
I see.
to be honest. But that got a big reaction, needless to say. Yeah.
I thought you got a confession from her.
And a few boos. She got a few boos from the audience, but it was okay. It was all for a good cause.
Okay. Okay, so you're telling me that, or telling us that the human rights situation in the Philippines and the repression there is the first thing that attracted you.
I guess it was a combination of two. One, the level of the human rights problems that people were facing, the political prisoners, the assassinations, just the all-out war on the people that Marcos was, leading, and plus the fact he was ripping them off, right, and stashing away the money, for him and his cronies. So there was that element. That was the negative element. So we really saw that. The positive element was we really saw the Filipino people's capacity to organize and to struggle, and I think probably that was the principal element that attracted us, right? Because as I was saying, we were looking at them and we were learning, right? We said, wow, that's how you do it. That's how you overthrow a dictator, right? You mobilize, you organize, and you educate, and you get together. And many people, of course, many brave people lost their lives in that struggle, right? So we were very admirative of that, and I think that affected us. But of course, at the same time, we were struggling and building solidarity with the Philippine people to try to put an end to those human rights violations and support their struggle for the eventual overthrow of the dictatorship. So, maybe in a little way, by our education campaigns and setting up our organization here and letting people know, and eventually putting some pressure on the Canadian government and so on, and its relationship with the dictatorship and all of that, hopefully, I think, supported the Philippine people's struggle to get control back of their own country.
And do you think, Malcolm, that right now the need for international solidarity on the issues of the Philippines is also very important?
Yes. Now, I was hoping, like many others, that in 1986, with the overthrow of the dictatorship, that we were going to really see, as many people hoped and dreamed, right? Major changes come about in the conditions of the Filipino people. But I've, kept in touch through the Center for Philippine Concerns and also through my filmmaking with Marie Boti over the last, since 1986, essentially. I've been very privileged to be able to visit the Philippines, to follow the situation there, to see what's happened. And, I, like many others, was disappointed to see that, unfortunately, 1986 did not signal a fundamental change in the lives of the majority of the Filipino people. And many of the problems that existed before, in terms of the overwhelming control of the majority of land, for example, by a small number of landlords, the export of human labor, the labor export policy that was started under Marcos has increased, and even thousands of people, as you know, leaving each day the Philippines to work around the globe. The fact is that there hasn't been, sufficient jobs or sufficient building of an economy built by and for the Filipino people. All of those, problems linked to land, linked to the economic control by a small minority in the Philippines, linked to foreign powers like the U.S. and Japan, and even our Canadian industrialists and mining companies and so on. All of that has meant that, unfortunately, solidarity is still very, very important, right? And the other thing is, the solidarity is there because the organizations that were set up during the anti-dictatorship phase have continued and are still continuing their work, and other organizations have developed. We have links, for example, with Gabriela, the women's organization, with the KMU, the workers' organization, with Migrante International, of course, for the migrant workers, for the Alliance of Concerned Teachers. All of these organizations are still reaching out and in need of solidarity, and are still, seeking our support and help today. So, yeah, unfortunately, so many years later, I would say that solidarity is definitely still needed, and is still we still have our job cut out for us. There's no doubt about that. If I thought I was going to take a vacation after 86, forget it. I've been busier than ever.
Malcolm, this is Louis.
Yes.
Yeah. I just have a question. You are also a film director and a film producer, and I know that you did a film on end of migration. Is that part of your solidarity work?
Well, our filmmaking, our whole lives are kind of built around our solidarity work, if you like. So our filmmaking has come out of our solidarity work. I don't see any separation between them. So, for example, as we were doing our solidarity work and support work in the late 80s and early 90s, we began to meet in the park here in Montreal and elsewhere, many Filipino nannies and domestic helpers, right?
Yeah.
And we said, "Ooh, what's going on here?" And as we looked into it and researched it, we realized that there was this huge surge in the number of women migrants that were coming here as domestic workers. So at that time, since we were filmmakers, it made sense for Marie Boti and other myself and others to go out and to try to document that. And so we made a film at that time about that phenomenon, right? And it turned into like 5 films in the end, because of course there was lots to talk about, right? So there was that one became Brown Women, Blonde Babies, and then we went on to make Modern Heroes, Modern Slaves, about the case of Flor Contemplacion who was hanged for supposedly mistreating a young child. And that was a huge case in the middle 90s. We went on to make a film about the impacts of separation of the families for so many years, called When Strangers Reunite. And so anyway, it became a major theme, the link with the Philippines in our filmmaking. So out of our solidarity work, our films emerged from that. And in return, when the films were finished, we were able to use those films to expand and use in our solidarity work to try to reach out to other people. So they were televised, for example, and then we would go and show the films, and people in the organizations such as Migrante and PNI and the women's organization here and so on could use those films in their organizing work. So they became organizing tools in and of themselves. So it was kind of it completed the cycle, right? So each one came out of our work and then became a means to kind of expand and increase our solidarity.
Malcolm, I'm just wondering, what was the reaction from the international community when you actually shown this film? I know that for a fact that Filipinos are very, they were very happy when I saw it in New York. But
yes.
But in international community, like in Canada perhaps, or in Montreal or in the States, what was the reaction?
Well, I think the main reaction was surprise, because people really didn't know that there was this case of the third world in your living room, right? Because it was a matter of putting it together, because the women, as you know, the domestic helpers were isolated in the homes of their employers, right? So it was very difficult for them to get their story out. But literally, there were thousands of them. So when we were able to put these stories together and show that this was a huge phenomenon, not only in Canada, but even globally, with the case of Flor Contemplacion and so on, I think people's first reaction was surprise. You mean that's happening right here or next door to me? So that was the first thing. So that was good, and that started a discussion going, right? And it enabled people to become aware and expand the discussion about domestic workers and the problems that they were facing in Canada and elsewhere, outside just of the Filipino community, who was, of course, becoming aware of it and was working around those issues, right? As you know, Migrante, the organized Migrante International, was set up in the wake of the Flor Contemplacion struggle, right? But I think what it did, that solidarity that came out of that, I think made a difference and has enabled us to help the organizations both working here in Canada and Migrante International and so on to better defend and better assist the migrant workers. So yes, surprise first, awareness, and then eventually many people took action, which was what we were hoping for in the end, right?
Yeah, most of our Filipino directors, like Lino Broca, Esmil Bernal, when they are actually showing, films with political content, they actually receive threats. Are you receiving any threats because of what you're doing? I mean, you're actually exposing the social conditions of the Philippines.
Yes. No, fortunately, no, not any physical threats. Not for these particular films. For other films where I deal with worker struggles and so on, those are very touchy issues, right? But in terms of these particular issues, no, we haven't received any threats. In fact, there's been a lot of support. So I don't know if we'll have to ask the Philippine government whether they were very happy about the films, but I hope so, because it exposed the reality and hopefully made them aware also of the conditions of the workers that they were sending out and benefiting from the billions of dollars of remittances. So let's look at the positive side of it and say, well, maybe it had a positive impact in this instance, right? But I agree, when you do treat political things like that, especially issues which go deep and question and ask major questions about the society in which you live, of course there are some people within the power structure who don't like that. So you can have reactions. But no, fortunately for us, with this particular series of films about migrants, we didn't have that problem.
Okay. It seems that you've done so much of solidarity work with your filmmaking. And now I'd like to know, because you're also a part of ILPS, or the International League of People's Struggles, right? So maybe you can tell us more about what other activities are part of solidarity work.
Sure. Well, I mean, the International League of Struggle is an international organization regrouping over 250 mass and community and union organizations around the globe in about 45 countries. So it's a big grouping.
Right.
So I think I would like to hope that I became involved in the ILPS, and I was elected as the Secretary General in 2011. I believe that came out of our grassroots solidarity work that we're doing for so many years in the Center for Philippine Concerns here in Canada. So it was kind of recognition of the work that I did and others did in that organization. So what this did is it allowed us to expand and spread our wings a little bit more outside of our local struggles, which are very important, but build solidarity around the globe, right, on all the continents. So it's really an organization which unites and builds solidarity, anti-imperialist solidarity. That's right. The basis of unity, right? In the same way that our Center for Philippine Concerns is in solidarity with the Movement for National Democracy in the Philippines, the ILPS clearly has an anti-imperialist mission statement. And so we gather all organizations that do that, and I think it's made a difference. It's really like the Center for Philippine Concerns was important for the Philippine struggle, hopefully, and we learned a lot, and we were able to bring speakers in. We were able to do actions here. We were able to do all kinds of missions to the Philippines, bring speakers here. Just last Monday, actually, we had an event with. I wanted to mention it with Sachiro Campo from the Philippines. To mark the September the 21st, the anniversary of martial law. So these actions, for example, that we did in the Center for Philippine Concerns, now we're doing them on a global scale, and that's where the International League of People's Struggle has widened it out of just support for the Philippine struggle, but support for all national liberation struggles, all people struggling around the globe for a better world, right? And against imperialism and oppression. So the two are linked. My local my local Center for Philippine Concerns and its unity with the struggle of the Filipino people, and the fact that the Center for Philippine Concerns is a member of the International League of Struggle allows us to unite with organizations doing similar work all over the globe. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I can imagine. We are having a last question.
Sure, there's always got to be one last question.
Just one last question.
I'm just getting warmed up.
No, it's because our time is a little bit limited. I know. So, do you have anything that you could advise to non-Filipinos regarding Philippine issues? And maybe you can mention some issues that you really believe that people would like to have solidarity on.
Yes. Well, I think one thing I do recommend to non-Filipinos is to try to go to the Philippines, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of our major activities at the Center for Philippine Concerns is our exposure program. So we have generally 2 or 3 or more people each year who going to the Philippines, right?
Mm-hmm.
And hold on, yeah. So we're going to the Philippines, and I think that's the main way. We can talk about it theoretically. We can exchange. I can give them readings. I can even show them films.
Right.
But I think it's crucial that as much as possible, if people really want to build solidarity, that they try to see it and exchange with people firsthand. So we really recommend that people go for as long as they can. Whether it's we suggest a minimum of 3 weeks, but if they can go for 3 to 6 months, even better, because then you can really integrate fully into an organization. So they will go, for example, and integrate into an organization like the women's group, Gabriela, or with the May 1st movement, the KMU, the workers, or Migrante, the migrant workers organization, and they'll really get to see on the ground what the conditions are, how people live, how they organize, how they work, what they do. And then when they come back, I really think, like me, who has my batteries charged, they come back and they're able and willing to really fully give their solidarity for
Malcolm, unfortunately we don't have much time, and thank you for joining us, and good luck to all your solidarity work.
All right, take care.
Mabuhay ka.
Bye.
Mabuhay, Malcolm.
Mabuhay.
And now we have perhaps a little feedback and the synthesis regarding our interview. What can you say, Louis?
I think napakahalaga ng pakikipag-ugnayan natin sa labas ng bansa, para sabi nga ni Malcolm yung kondisyon ng ating lipunan ay hindi lang sa natututo sila sa atin, kundi na ipapakita sa buong mundo kung paano dinadahas ang mamamayan, at nasusurprise ang mga first world countries, hindi nila alam to. So itong pakipag-ugnayan natin sa kanila, mahalaga itong simula o mahalagang gawain na dapat ginagawa natin para makapakita kung ano talaga ang tunay na kalagayan ng ating bayan.
Oo. At saka kahit tayo na andito at alam naman natin yung mga pangyayari sa ating bansa at alam din natin kung ano yung mga kondisyon natin dito bilang migrante. Maganda rin na nakikipag-communicate tayo sa mga taga-ibang lahi tungkol sa mga isyong ito.
Gumawa tayo ngayon ng Pulso ng Migrante at pakinggan po natin ang aming pong nakalap na audio para dito.
My opinion on the topic of the international community stepping in to address human rights violations oppression, or living in a place where they feel safe and they feel that they can be prosperous, they're not going to leave and look for something someplace else. That was how it was years ago. People would leave what we would consider a second or third world country to go to North America or go to Europe or go to England looking for that better life. But now, if we can fix that situation through getting involved as an international community or a world organization or community, then people don't have to leave their home. No one I ever knew left paradise to go to someplace where it was frigid and cold, left paradise to go to someplace where they knew nobody, they didn't know the language, didn't know the culture, and had no way of really assimilating when they first came into these other countries.
Intervention in the Philippines and the involvement of the Philippines in possible U.S. military action in the region. U.S. troops' presence in the bases run counter to the spirit of the prohibition on the presence of U.S. troops and facilities in the Constitution of the Philippines. The rotation of U.S. troops is irrelevant. We are also concerned that the bases could serve as launching pads for U.S. drones that have already led to the deaths of thousands of people in the Middle East and South Asia, including significant numbers of civilians, and which are operated in an atmosphere of illegality, secret, and
It is especially important to note that from the Marcos dictatorship up to the present, international pressure has always been a crucial factor in compelling the government to do something about the alarming human rights violations in the country. Human rights is already enshrined in the Philippine Constitution and the various laws in the Philippines. That may be the case on paper, but we also know that human rights is more than just a piece of paper. It is a living and dynamic struggle between the victim and the perpetrator, the oppressed and the oppressor, the freedom fighter and the tyrant. Today, we have gathered to pursue that struggle in behalf of the victims, the oppressed, and all those who yearn for a just and lasting peace. May we all succeed in this mission. Long live international solidarity.
Revolutionary people have won the international solidarity and support of revolutionary, anti-imperialist and progressive organizations and individuals from different parts of the world. They are also contributing their solidarity to the just causes of other people's struggles in the spirit of proletarian internationalism and anti-imperialist solidarity.
One of the most important contributions of the churches in the human rights struggles is resourcing the international ecumenical friends and partners. This is the church's historical role in international solidarity since the 1970s.
We value so much your solidarity work with us. We have the highest regard to the work you do in your respective countries in informing the people of the world what is happening here in the Philippines. On behalf of my fellow workers in Karapatan who have been targeted, and in fact, whom 35 of them are not yet here anymore, we salute you and we offer this event, and we hope that they are there with us.
You must define and stress the anti-imperialist and democratic common ground for the Filipino people and the people of the world in confronting the forces that violate human rights and in striving to develop, expand, and consolidate a movement of international solidarity for upholding, defending, and advancing human rights and people's rights, and for promoting and realizing a just peace in the world.
Karugtong ng digma ang nagmula pa noon, ang kalayaang nilalay.
Nanawagan ng mga kontribusyon ang grupong akdaan para sa kanilang ikalawang aklat na ilulunsad sa Disyembre ngayong taon. Maaaring magpadala ng inyong mga likhang sining katulad ng maikling kwento, salaysay, sanaysay, at tula at iba pang forma ng malikhaing panulat. Ang tema ng pangalawang aklat ay hinggil sa migrasyon at sa mga isyong tumutukoy sa buhay at karanasan ng mga migranteng manggagawa. Maaaring ipadala ang inyong likha sa email na grupongakdaan@yahoo.ca hanggang sa katapusan ng Setyembre, taong kasalukuyan, o kaya'y tumawag sa numero bilang 647-985-5969 para sa mga karagdagang impormasyon.
At sa ating pangalawang announcement, gusto niyo bang maging bahagi ng Radyo Migrante? Halina at sumali sa Radyo Migrante Collective. Kung kayo interesado bilang volunteer, maaari kayong sumali sa mga pagsasanay at iba't ibang training na binibigay ng programa. Ang mambukas na posisyon ay board operator, tagapagbalita, reporter or correspondent, tagapagsaliksik, researcher at social media archivist. Sumulat lamang po sa aming email sa radmig105.5fm@gmail.com o kayo tumawag po sa numero bilang 647-281-0652 para po sa iba pang karagdagang impormasyon.
Filipino-Canadian Workers Network formed. The Filipino-Canadian Workers Network is working to build a network of union activists in the Greater Toronto area. On July 22nd, the Filipino-Canadian Union members came together in the first organizing meeting plan how to take a pro-union message into the community, as well as supporting each other as union leaders and activists. This network is supported by the Toronto-York Region Labor Council staff, led by activists and union leaders from the community. Last Labor Day parade, the founding members started to reach out to Filipino Canadians who participated in the parade and have signed up many more members. This coming November, they are planning to have a meet and greet event. Those who are interested to join can contact them by sending email to network@laborcouncil.ca or call 416-441-3663 extension 223.
Tita Pet, alam ko, in relation to that, meron tayong gagawing activist assembly sa Tuesday. No? Related sa news na yan. Mary, meron ka bang dagdag na babatiin? No? O binabati pala namin sina Rhea at ang grupo. At nagpapasalamat din kami pala kay Carl Ramirez dahil sa susunod na linggo patutugtugin na natin yung bago nating intro song, no? At ginawa ito ni Carl Ramirez, isang musikong bayan, no?
Salamat
Carl Ramirez. At syempre pag-uusapan naman natin next week din ang mga issue na tatalakayin puli natin na kaugnay sa mga nangyayari sa ating bayan.
Yung Peasants month yata ang ating umpisahan next October na yan, So ngayon meron din tayo mga nakakabit diyan ng mga topics at may mga guest tayo uli mula sa Pilipinas na ating kakausapin.
Kanina pala nagkaroon tayo ng isang magandang fundraising doon sa ating mga kaibigang mga Pilipino na tumatakbo pa sa mga posisyon ngayong halalan sa October 27. Ang panawagan lang natin sa mga kababayan ay lumabas po tayo lahat, makibahagi tayo sa political process upang maguhan natin ang ating kahalagahan bilang mamamayan dito sa Canada.
Another life falls to the ground. We're the gift to remember. Another reminder for you and for me that the struggle for peace must be won.